I'm going to record to this computer.
All right. Well, let's do that again. Welcome to the Introduction to the Service Enterprise Spring 2026 Cohort Series. This is intended to help you understand what Service Enterprise is, where it came from, and also to encourage you to think about joining a cohort with us. So, I'm Mike Ashmore. I'm the Program Development and Training Officer here at Volunteer Maine. I am retiring on Friday, though, so uh, this will be one of my last presentations.
Every time he
And
says it, my heart dies a little bit.
Maureen, you want to?
So I'm Maureen Kendzierski. I'm the Volunteer Services Coordinator. I have met some of you previously, and some of you are new to me. I will be taking over for Michael as the Service Enterprise Trainer, amongst a couple other very exciting things that Michael is leaving for me. Um, I am I am here today a lot to really try to capture Michael's superior knowledge before I dive into leading the trainings for the folks who do join our cohorts. So I'm going to let Michael take the reins and run through this intro. But I may be popping in from time to time with comments and or questions so that I can make sure that I know what I'm doing as we move forward.
Great. So thank you, Maureen. So normally, if we were in a room together, I would hand you a sticky pad and ask you to do two things. One is to take a moment or two to just jot down what you think are your organization's assets and to be kind of detailed about that. Um, what are the things that you have that you can draw on to make a difference in your community, or what are you already using? And then think about, um, in addition to your mission, what are your goals? What is it that you would like to be able to do that perhaps you're not quite able to achieve, particularly in things where you think, boy, if we just had a few more hands or we had a little more capacity, we'd be able to do these things. So take a moment, um, jot some notes. Give everyone about a minute. About 10 more seconds. Okay, close your blue books and put your pencils down. And hopefully that didn't give you like a traumatic response, going back to university or high school when you were told to put your pencils down. Now we're going to take a little bit of an examination of those particular goals. So go back and look at your goals and then think very concretely and very specifically. In order to get to those goals, what do you feel like your organization needs to be able to accomplish those things? And this is an opportunity for you to think grandly, as if you had your magic wand in your hand. What tangible resources and money might you need? What do you need in terms of human resources to achieve one or more of those goals? And if you were thinking human resources, what do those people need to know and be able to do? And then how much time do you think it would take if you had the resources that you've already that you identified there. So the stuff and the people. How long would it take you to get to those goals? So again, we'll take a minute, minute and a half to give you some idea to dive into those. About 20 more seconds, recognizing that it's not enough time for you to create an entire Gantt chart and action plan.
I'll let you know. I already just did, Michael.
All right. Anybody who's here, Heather, Monica, Crystal, Christy, Joanne, somebody want to share what you're thinking? Just real quickly. What'd you put on your list?
I can share.
Thanks, Monica.
So we're a community action agency and we're chronically understaffed and programs just don't pay enough money for us to bring on this number of staff that we would like to be able to do. So I'm looking at trying to find more balance for our staff as one of our goals. And then wishful thinking, there are a couple of ideas, concept ideas that we have that I would love to be able to put into place, like a workforce development sort of situation where we're helping families that we're already working with or people that need assistance to develop workforce skills, even at a basic level. And so, trying to find a way to kind of build and launch that program would be really fun.
Nice. Thanks,
Do you
Monica.
need to know what I think we need for?
Yeah, tell me what you think. Just
I think we need some additional unrestricted funding for program development. Possibly, I'd really like to see a volunteer coordinator type of position, which we would have to figure out how to fund. The people that we would need to help us with that would be like for the human resources piece. They'd have to be skilled, but they don't have to necessarily have like big degrees, big fancy degrees or anything like that, but they need to be dedicated to our mission and they need to be able to be vetted so that they can work with people that we have. And then I anticipate that we could use it from a volunteer perspective, we could use multiple people with that would commit a regular schedule of 10 or more hours a week.
nice. Great. That's very concrete. Appreciate that. Joanne, hi, Joanne. It's been a while since I've had a chance to be on a meeting with you. Um, I saw your camera come on, so was just wondering if you planned on sharing, and you're muted. So
Unmute. There we go. Yeah, I mean, Friends of Acadia, we're sort of, we raise funds to preserve and protect the park, but the way we do that is community engagement, really. Without the community, there's nothing. So it's spreading the word. So every summer, we've traditionally had one membership table at Jordan Pond House from, weekdays, Monday through Friday, hosted by volunteers, like 2 volunteers. And, if there's rain, we have to cancel. If there's not enough volunteers for that day, we have to cancel. And the volunteer core that I inherited when I took this position on 1.5 years, 2 years ago, was already an aged group. And that have been volunteering for us for 20 years. And a lot of them are just, we can't do it anymore. And which is totally understandable. So if we didn't have volunteers to host these tables, we'd have to hire people. And I did get approved to have 2 seasonals hired for this season as sort of a trial to, figure it out, to see what's going to happen. So, I mean, I haven't crunched the numbers for this discussion today, but, it's a significant amount of additional help is going to be needed to support if we want to increase the amount of tables. There's lots of places
Sure.
on the island, not just membership, not just Jordan Pond House, that we can have a membership table, but we don't have the people power to make that happen.
But you have the popover power at Jordan.
We have the popover power, which is very important.
So thank you both for sharing. I'm always fascinated to hear where people are at and what they're thinking. But in the interest of time and your time especially, I'm going to move forward and we're going to talk a little bit about what a service enterprise actually is. So lots of organizations use volunteers in many different ways. And, in Maine in particular, among nonprofits, 66% of the nonprofits in the state of Maine have budgets under $50,000, which means that they run on volunteers that pretty much have no paid staff. And 77% of the nonprofits in the state of Maine have budgets under $100,000. So 3/4 of the nonprofits in Maine, which is more than 3,000, almost 3,500, have budgets that have 1 or no paid staff. And less than 3% have budgets that are on the scale of multi-millions of dollars. So the vast majority of nonprofits in Maine utilize volunteers. So what's a service enterprise? A service enterprise is a subset of those agencies that deploy volunteers. And they do it, and they're called service enterprises because they do it in a way that is different. A service enterprise is a volunteer organization that fundamentally, at its most basic level, leverages volunteers and their skills across all aspects of the organization to successfully deliver on its mission. Service enterprises are high performing. They have deeply integrated volunteers into their organizational infrastructure, and they think about volunteers strategically. What this means is that they reduce costs and they increase efficiency and effectiveness as they deliver on their mission. So service enterprises are organizations that have taken volunteerism and used it to really completely shift the organizational perspective in a way that takes this idea of volunteer resources and thinks about them in the same way they think about all their human resources. So instead of having employees and then a program that's sort of separate where you have volunteers, service enterprises have staff. And among those staff, there are paid and unpaid staff. And those staff all work together strategically to deliver the mission of the organization. Just to give you a little history around that, about 20 years ago, a little bit more than 20 years ago, Reimagining Service, along with some partners, looked at an existing data set of nonprofit organizations that the TCC group was utilizing. And the CCAT was a core capacity assessment tool. And its purpose was literally to assess organizational effectiveness in relation to 4 capacities: leadership, adaptability, management, and technical capabilities. And one of the unique things about the CCAT at that time was that it was actually also looking at organizational culture. And so at that time, there were more than 3,000 organizations that had gone through the CCAT assessment, and they were looking really at how volunteer engagement impacted organizational capacity. Um, the key researcher was or discovered, came out with this basic finding, which was that on all aspects of organizational capacity, um, organizations that manage volunteers well are better led, um, more adaptable, more cost effective than organizations that don't. And so that research was taken and then moved forward. And I'll just give you a little bit of the idea about the data here. So again, about 3,000 organizations. Um, and then among those, the original data set looked really in depth at 600. And the top score in the CCAT is 300. And as you can see in the boxes here, below 190 is weak, 190 to 240 satisfactory, and greater than 240 is strong. 18% of the nonprofits are weak, 64% were considered satisfactory. And these are not just scores, evaluatory scores. These are self-assessment scores. So this is how the organizations perceived themselves based on a set of research prompts. Of the 17% that were considered strong, about 6% deployed between 1 and 50 volunteers, and 11% deployed about 50 plus volunteers. And of that overall group, including both the 6% with a small number of volunteers and the larger percentage with a higher number of volunteers, only about 11% of the total group here was considered a service enterprise. And just so you know, one of the things that's reassuring about this data is that it distributes normally, right? So the majority of people are in the middle. There's a weak tail and a strong head, and that, you know, nobody completely fails or succeeds, but it is a normal distribution. So there's some confidence that it's a good baseline measure. And it's not skewed, so you don't have too many successful and too many failures. So anyway, reassuring if you're a statistician. Whoops, went a little too far there. So what they looked at was these three sort of, well, what's evolved since that research is a little richer and more detailed understanding of what a service enterprise is and does. And they divide those chunks of performance or organizational effort into three different domains: establishing the foundation, the best practices in volunteer engagement. And that establishing the foundation has a lot to do with the culture of the organization. And then some other focus on outcomes and evaluation. And they divide those three domains into 4 characteristics each. And I don't think anybody who's been working in an organization is surprised by really any of those. Resource allocation, having good technology, leadership involvement, good planning, good volunteer management includes recruitment, training, cultivation, good onboarding, good supervision. And then on the technology side, tools that facilitate collaboration and communication, tracking of growth and change, and evaluation of processes are all make a great deal of sense. So this is the service enterprise model that we train towards now. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of that, let me just share a quick video with you. And I'm going to swap my screen out a little bit. And are you guys all seeing the Why Are We Dressing Service Enterprise Portfolio screen now? Yes, yes. Thank you, Heather. All right. If you don't hear the sound right away, also let me know.
So you're sitting at your desk and you're reviewing your list of tasks for the day. With each hour that passes, you mark one task off and yet 2 more appear. You talk with your team, you talk with your boss, and everyone is having the same problem. As you look at your to-do list, you worry that you're not spending your time efficiently. Some of your responsibilities are foreign to you, and you feel like you're building a bicycle and riding it at the same time. Next month, you have to complete your department's annual budget. You carve out an hour every day to focus on it, but you're distracted by other projects, and math is not your strong suit. You think of your neighbor Sandra, an accountant, and wish she would suddenly appear to take on the responsibility. Now, consider she could appear. Imagine that Sandra, or someone like Sandra, had a role built into your organization to use her specific skill set to serve your organization. With her help, you would focus on what you're good at. You would feel like the work your team is doing is making a tangible contribution to your organization's mission, the same mission that attracted you to join the organization. By engaging Sandra and other skill-based volunteers, your organization could operate as a service enterprise. A service enterprise is an organization that fundamentally leverages volunteers and their skills to achieve its social mission. This means engaging volunteers in every area of your work, from direct service to operations to administration. Research conducted by TCC Group and Deloitte demonstrates that nonprofits operating as service enterprises outperform peer organizations on all measures of organizational capacity, thereby allowing these organizations to more effectively address community needs and operate at almost half the median budget. When an organization leverages volunteers and achieves an effective volunteer management model, not only do they lead and manage their organizations better, but they are also significantly more adaptable, sustainable, and better resourced to do their work, and therefore able to sustainably go to scale.
Based on research findings updated in 2022 from TCC Group, Deloitte, Algorithm, and the RGK Center for Philanthropy and Community Engagement at the University of Texas, Austin, there are 3 service enterprise domains and 12 characteristics. Establishing the foundation domain is all about creating and sustaining the appropriate groundwork and necessary organizational underpinnings to assure the successful engagement of volunteers and other community resources. It includes characteristics of funding and resource allocation, technology, leadership involvement, and planning. The best practices in volunteer engagement domain includes practices which ensure the effective engagement of volunteers and community partners. This includes the characteristics of supervision and support, training, onboarding, and recruitment and cultivation. Our last domain is impact and outcomes. It looks at the degree to which your organization utilizes the tools at your disposal to create and sustain relationships, tell your story, listen to your stakeholders, and measure success against your mission and organizational objectives. This includes the characteristics: collaboration, communication, growth and change, tracking, and evaluation. If you want to learn more and how you can offer this program to your community, or
You can talk to us, because we are the group in Maine that has the intellectual property rights and the license to do service enterprise training. That's how we got here. So as it said, service enterprise is a process. It's really an organizational change process. So it requires participation, not just from someone who goes to a training and comes back and wishes that the organization would do something. It is one where the organization commits to a significant investment in training, not money, because the service enterprise, which typically costs between $5,000 and $8,000 around the rest of the country for organizations to engage in, Volunteer Maine is covering that cost. And so it's a very minimal investment up front for organizations, but it does require that organizational leadership and a change management team participate in the training. So we're at the very beginning stage, right at the top. If you have an interest in this, we ask you to apply to be part of a cohort. We find that cohort-based trainings work better. You have a peer group that you can bounce ideas off of. Often it includes smaller and larger organizations, less resourced and more resource organizations, and those discussions, I think, help illuminate for people the types of challenges that appear across the spectrum of volunteer organizations. It starts with an orientation, which is overlaps a little with this, a little more detailed, a little more extensive, takes about 3 hours. We offer this cohort remotely online. We have done face-to-face cohorts before COVID. We did them that way more often than we did remote ones. And then the curriculum is modified a little bit for better use in a Zoom-based format. It's a little there's more frequent but shorter segments, which makes it a little more digestible. But after orientation, you sort of say, "Yep, we're definitely fully committed. We want to do this." And what we do is we connect you with the Service Enterprise Diagnostic, what we call the SED, SED, and it is a more advanced version of that CCAT evaluation, and it looks at your performance in all 12 of those characteristics as an organization. And the SED is taken by a representative group of people in your organization. One individual is the administrator or manages the process of taking the SED, and that person has a few more questions. They have to collect information and some data around how the organization invests in volunteers, and the types of resources that are used with volunteers. And then everyone else is asked a similar set of questions. And typically we get the most complete results when an organization has their executive director or CEO participate, perhaps a manager of volunteers or someone who works regularly with volunteers, people who supervise volunteers, key volunteers themselves, and key staff members. And normally somewhere between 6 and 10 people take the diagnostic questionnaires. Those are then processed by TCC and Deloitte, and you get back a profile of your organization that is aligned with organizations that have similar size and investment in volunteerism. So it doesn't compare the Red Cross with the local animal shelter. It takes organizations that have sort of 3 different tiers of scale, and you get put into that, and then you are assessed in those 12 characteristics as to whether you're already operating in that characteristic as a service enterprise or whether you have room to grow. It's not a quality evaluation. It doesn't say you're good or bad because you got this score. It's a diagnostic that helps you see in a very concrete way where your performance is. And then we come out and do a debrief with you. It takes about 90 minutes. We meet with your team. We go through the diagnostic and help you understand what it indicates and what it means and what resources are there. And then you invest in a couple-month-long training series. There are 7 different trainings. Typically, they're about a week apart, and they take a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours each. There are 2 instances in the middle of the training where you have a 2-week between trainings as opposed to 1, and those are the 2 sessions where you have a little more homework. So one is where you have to do some more detailed analysis of your investments in volunteer management. And then the last one, you have an extra week to prepare a presentation for the other members of the cohort. And that presentation is not just for the members of the cohort. It's designed to be a presentation that you will use both internally and externally with your organization. And the cohort is there to give you feedback on how to make that a better presentation. And then as you go through the training and certification, we give you a format for a service enterprise action plan. And you start with your diagnostic scores and some recommended frameworks for moving forward, some resources, the training itself. And as you go through the training, you build that action plan. And then you and your team deploy after the training to take action, to move your organization towards being a service enterprise. And once you've done those action steps, and sometimes they're short and quick, and other times organizations see where they're at and take the training and decide they have more work to do, and it takes a little longer. But in the end, once the action plan has been accomplished and you have a body of evidence around how you act as a service enterprise, you can apply for certification, a national certification as a service enterprise. We come and we provide ongoing coaching during the period that you're doing your action planning work, and then we facilitate the certification application and process for you. And then you have that to say, not only are we a great organization, but we also operate in a really efficient way based on this national research. And you can use that to go to funders and say, hey, we're a really good investment because we're so efficient, because we utilize our staff in a way that makes us a better investment. And then there's a continuous improvement process. You want to continue to operate as a service enterprise. You continue to collect data and information. Maine nonprofits tend to have a pretty good employee churn. So you want to make sure that that culture that you've started and that you're bringing people on board and that you're maintaining that work. And then every 3 years, you can reapply for continued certification. And that process can help with that base culture and structure. So it's a really unique opportunity, partly because of the cost framework that we've established, partly because it's a nationally recognized and research-based model. There are there are thousands of other organizations in the country, and you get connected with that larger network. And all of that's to your benefit as an organization. So, as I said, the Service Enterprise Diagnostic helps you sort of see where you're at, allows you to do a little bit of navel gazing and think about what moves you might want to make. It serves, as it says here, a catalyst for transformation, and can be a really good way to take the change actions that you want to accomplish from the core team out into the larger group of people in your organization and also in the community who may want to support you. Time commitment, the application is very short. It was really an indication of interest and an agreement to pay the one cost that we impose on you, and that is the price of the SED, which is about, I think, $360. Am I remembering that right, Maureen? So you come to the orientation, a couple hours. Each person who does the diagnostic takes about 30 minutes to do it, except for the administrator who has a slightly longer one, as I said. We come out, we sit with you and do a debrief. I usually budget around 90 minutes, but it says here 2 hours, which is not an unsensible thing. The training itself is a total of 16 hours with homework for your transition or your change team in between. And then, as I said, we have that ongoing 20 to 30 hours of additional coaching and training that is specific to your organization and not done in the cohort, so that you can get some real focused support. And then when you decide to take that action plan and you've done the steps, we take on the evidence that you've produced and go through a process of looking at it to make sure that you're ready for certification, and offer, some feedback if there's areas where we see that maybe there's a gap or something that and what the most common thing is, and Maureen can attest to this, is that it's pretty obvious that you're doing it, but the evidence that's there doesn't really show that. And we're sending it out to a national audience. And so what we need to do is help you find the right evidence to make sure that you're demonstrating a particular standard.
I tend to use the phrase, I know you do this and help me find out how to evidence it to someone else because I can see that you do it. So just help me find the evidence and I help you figure out what those things are.
So the benefits that come out of all this is you have increased organizational capacity. You have typically an increase in volunteer hours of more than 50%, sometimes much higher than that. Many organizations go from having volunteers in sort of a somewhat disorganized or ancillary program, or that only volunteer at the basic delivery or um, base labor level, and they become integrated and more skilled in the organization. It allows you to better address community needs and to be more integrated with the community, which is one of the benefits of managing volunteers really well. And then the research is really clear that um, operating as a service enterprise is a really effective way of helping you go from where you're at to a larger scale delivery, um, because you have, in effect, better human resource management. As I said, your cost is around $350, and that is literally the cost of having the diagnostic done. All the other stuff um, is paid for by us, and our time, our the licensing of the training model, the delivery, the materials, all that stuff is provided by us. Organizations that operate as service enterprises, as it said at the beginning, are better led and operate at half the median budget for the same impact. Now, that doesn't mean that your budget's going to drop from where it is to half of what it is now. What the research indicates, though, is that when organizations operate as service enterprises, they deliver twice the impact for the same amount of money. So that's a really important thing. And that's why this is attractive to funders, because it is a certification that you're operating in a way that is utilizing the resources that funders give you in really effective ways. The research also indicates that for each dollar that a service enterprise invests in its volunteer engagement, they get $6 back for that investment. So a return on investment of 6 to 1. And as it says here, a majority of service enterprises demonstrate an increase in volunteer hours and an increase in the total number of volunteers as well. And typically volunteers that have a specific applicable skill set that is distributed across the organization. So what we're looking at is an orientation at the beginning of next month. And then this is a sample. What we typically do is we work with the cohort to pick a particular time frame that works for all the members of the cohort. So what you would do is we do the orientation, we'd give you some time to get your team together, organize the diagnostic and get the briefing after you've done it. And then starting in March, we would do the trainings. So as you can see, there's A through G here, and then you'll see that there are the 2 weeks, the last week of March and the last week of April, when there's an extra week involved because the homework is more specific or more, there's more of it. This involves the formation of a change management team at your organization. And you would typically have to schedule a meeting of that group in between your training meetings. That becomes the most effective model. So you have to think about that as well. If you want to pursue it, please let Maureen know. And she can certainly provide additional information. We'll continue to refine, what we do throughout this is one, look at the cohort, sort of tailor the training to the types of groups that are in it, refine action steps and provide additional resources. Some of those are suggested by Points of Light and by Alive and by people that have done this training before, organizations. There's a bunch of case studies. There's some really great learning exercises, some readings, um, and some models from various research, and then practical opportunities for you to go in and sort of, as I said, look at your own practice in your building and figure that out. I will say that just as an example, a few years back, we had an organization that went through this process, and one of the first activities is to think about what it's like, what's the culture, what's the current state in your organization, and their presentation around that was that they were running around pillar to post putting out fires, that they spent a huge amount of time with their volunteers. And this is a group of 18 paid staff and 1,400 volunteers, and that they spent all their time putting out fires. And and their vision to move forward was to take all this crazy interaction and focus it in a direction and move it from being a big splash into a concentrated wave, which I thought was a lovely image. And then what they discovered in their service enterprise journey was that they could take key volunteers and put them into roles to put out the fires. And that freed the paid staff up to actually do the jobs that they were being paid for instead of constantly being interrupted with volunteer management issues. And that was transformative for this organization. They actually reduced the size of their staff in the end and increased the number of volunteers delivering services. But very much built into that was to take the value and skill of the volunteers and to allow them to help manage volunteers. And that was really transformative for them. And that's something that I think is a really great model for that, or how this whole process works. So questions that you have about this, about time frame, things like that?
That's great information.
I will stop sharing. Thank you, Joanne.
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the types of organizations that might be better served. For example, there may be a range of sizes and on even just on this call. For example, if I were representing our historical society, it's a very small organization. And is that an organization that is, maybe not ready for something like this?
I think Service Enterprise works for organizations that have no paid staff, and for organizations as large as the Girl Scouts in the state of Maine, who went through the training with us a while back. Organizations like Maine Audubon, which was just recently certified, who has thousands of citizen science volunteers and a fairly significant budget. And then very small organizations like the Brickstore Museum in Kennebunk.
Okay, so
another very
easier.
small museum. Yeah. Really key to making this successful is to be able to be really thoughtful about how your organization operates, particularly in relation to how it understands the human resource management components, and to be able to think about that in a way that allows for growth and change.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna say something about that because I'm much newer than Michael to Service Enterprise. So I've spent the last year learning a lot about it, particularly through the process of getting the certification completed for Maine Audubon. So I went from zero knowledge of Service Enterprise to really in-depth understanding of how one organization was looking at it. But I think that the couple of things that I find the most exciting about Service Enterprise and the Service Enterprise training and how at least a couple of organizations have approached it is that one of my favorite things is that it's on your time frame. the training is on our time. It's on everybody's time frame, but that's the 16 hours of training. And then how you move forward with that really can be a difference of a couple of months to a couple of years, depending on how much change you want to have or how much change is required for you to reach your goals within your organization, how much capacity you have to spend time on that and gather the evidence and have the meetings and learn those things. But the other thing that I think is the most impactful and most exciting part of the service enterprise training are the conversations and deep thinking that happens on the part of the organization. It's not us that changes your organization. It's the organization that changes itself. And it really is that it is an amazing framework to lead those conversations and to lead that change within your organization to make it a more effective volunteer and organization overall. It's incredible to see it in process. So I just wanted to share those as my perspective of somebody new to Service Enterprise.
And there are organizations, and I mentioned this one in particular because of Heather and Monica's presence. Jason Parent at ACAP up in Worcester County went through this training, and they went through a significant amount of action planning and work around the model, and they decided not to apply for certification. They felt that they'd made significant changes and that's enough for them. We would love to see them certified, but it's up to you guys to decide if that's something that you value or not. Southern Maine Area Agency on Aging, very similar, went through training, took a long time and had some leadership changes and some other pieces that impacted their work. But they're interested in coming back after 5 years later and submitting for certification at this point. And so it really has a lot to do with sort of where you find yourself and where you are in your stages of organizational development. What it is really useful for new organizations or small organizations, I think, is that it helps provide a framework to build an organization that is set up for growth and for community interconnectedness and for the use of skilled human resources, whether they're paid or unpaid. And that is a really great capacity building opportunity. I'll also say that we have organizations, particularly our hospitals in the state of Maine, where we talk to their volunteer coordinators at events like this, and they say, oh my gosh, this is what we really need. And they take it to the CEO of the hospital and they're like, I don't have 15 hours to waste on this. And they don't move forward. So it does take an organizational commitment in order to make it actually bear fruit. But that's not a function of the size of the organization. Well, it might be with the hospitals, I don't know, but not on the small end. Other questions or thoughts? Be great to get a cohort with more CAP agencies. That could be cool. And Heather, you do a literacy program, so that might be another. You could encourage maybe some peer organizations to jump in as well.
Yeah, I look forward to bringing this information to our leadership team and seeing what they think about it.
Crystal,
Michael,
go ahead, Monica.
I'm sorry. I was with ACAP when they started investigating service enterprise as an option, and I've since moved to southern, more southern area, mid-coast Maine, and now I'm with Waldo Cap, and we're much smaller
Right.
agency than ACAP, but I don't know if we're further along than they would have been in that endeavor. So I was just more curious about finding out if it would work for us or not.
I think it can. I mean, again, it's really an opportunity to learn about your organization and about some of the assumptions that are sort of baked into the work that you do. We're often so busy doing the million different things that nonprofits try and accomplish every day, and to make a difference in the community, that we don't have the opportunity to step up on the balcony and watch ourselves work. And that is uniquely part of this cohort process, is to really have the time and to set aside and say, how do we do these things? What are our needs? What does this national data set say about how we operate? And I think I have not yet worked with an organization that was not at least somewhat surprised by what came back. Crystal, what's the museum?
Narraguegas Historical Society,
Oh, nice. Great.
trying to reinvent themselves, bring themselves back from near dissolution.
That's a challenge, particularly in the more rural parts of the state. There's a community development model called the Heart and Soul. It's a process which often um, is one that so Service Enterprise is an organizational development internal, but often communities that are struggling find the Heart and Soul process really useful, because it starts with this idea of telling stories about what's important in the community from all age perspectives, and that creates a basis for community action. And the two of those in combination can be really, really powerful. And we have some good examples from around the state of Maine, Biddeford, Skowhegan, Damerscotta, that have done pretty amazing stuff using, and it's funded through the Orton Family Foundation, and they have grants to help support communities that are in that existential crisis mode. Any other questions? Whether or not you decide to move forward with Service Enterprise, we encourage you to stay connected with Volunteer Maine. What we're about is increasing organizational capacity, and we do that by funding different programs. We offer resources and training. We are here to try and help you as an organization. So don't be shy. We love Service Enterprise primarily because it's organizational change. Much of the rest of what we do trains individuals. And what we know from 30 years of doing this is that the turnover in the volunteer management field and the movement of people in the field from one agency or one role to another means that training someone in a skill set doesn't always move the lever on an organizational, and because people don't have enough time to implement the change. So we invested in Service Enterprise because we see, both nationally and locally, that it does change the organization in a way that tends to be sustainable, as opposed to investing in training one individual who then is likely to move and take their talents elsewhere. And so that's why we invest in it, because we see it work. Thanks for your time, everybody. We got that done in under an hour. We got 2 minutes left.
I'm gonna reach out to everybody probably next week, just with a little bit of information and the application if you're interested. Give you some time to reflect and talk to your folks. But I will reach back out to everybody. And you can always reach out to me. You cannot reach out to Michael. I'm
You can, but it's
not, it's
not
just gonna
be very
bounce back.
fruitful.
You're just gonna get an email that says, haha, I'm retired. Go talk to Maureen. So I'll connect with all of you around whether or not you have any interest in attending the orientation. And you can always just reach out to me about any volunteer management support that you need, because that is part of my role as the volunteer services coordinator. So feel free to reach out anyway, even if you have a different question or a different issue that you need help resolving. And
we also have the Volunteer Managers Network. So if you
If you are not in the Volunteer Managers Network, you should be in the Volunteer Managers Network. We have a monthly virtual meeting. We never expect that everyone is going to show up for every monthly virtual meeting. But if you join the Volunteer Managers Network, you get all of the information and you get invited to every monthly meeting. And then when you can make it, we're thrilled to see you. And it's fun because it's always a different mix of people every month, because who can make it that month is who is in the mix. It's a really great way to interact with other folks who share a lot of your same responsibilities and challenges.
And I just put the sign up in the chat.
Yep. And you do get awesome newsletters and awesome information when you're part of the network. It's a good network.
Thanks so much, everybody.
I'm down to 1%, so I'm so glad that I was
Perfect
able
timing,
to
Crystal. Perfect
get through
timing.
get through it. Thanks,
Tell
guys.
everybody in Machias I said hello.
I will.
I know what office you're in. So.
Yes, yes.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
My hair's being weird today. I just moved her out. I assumed she was no longer really with us. I'm so glad that people showed up. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I inadvertently lumped Heather into Waldo Cap instead of Christy. I was reading Heather's name, but hopefully I corrected it by pointing out that she ran a literacy project.
Yes, she also, I know Heather.
Yeah, she was on the planning committee for the MBLC last year.
That's why. But yeah, I hope that we have a good cohort. That would be actually an awesome cohort because they're physically close to each other relatively.
Yeah.
They were all in the general sort of almost down east area.
Well, and
somebody just signed up for the Thanks for putting the link in there, Michael, because somebody just signed up for the Volunteer Managers Network.
Getting a phone call.
All right.
Gotta run.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.